Hey guys, so I turned up the volume on my microphone and hopefully you'll be able to hear me a little bit better today. I'm going to try to talk louder, so if I start yelling, you can let me know now that I'm too loud. But hopefully you'll be able to hear me better. So what we're going to do today, we're going to skip forward in history just a little bit. And we are going to skip over a very important event and we're going to come back to it so we can spend some more time on it. Because it's also going to bridge the gap between US and Europe, okay? So we are going to skip over World War I, which took place between 1914 and 1918. Now, we already kind of got ahead of that yesterday when we were talking about our women suffragists. And who remembers what year the 19th Amendment was ratified? Anybody? If you know, you can put it in the comments, which I will be hopefully unlocking. If the comments are still not working, put it in your collaboration section in your OneNote notebook. Okay, so we are going to skip forward to one of my favorite historical decades in our country. It is called the Roaring Twenties. I've always felt that it would be super fun to live during the Roaring Twenties in America. It was overall a pretty fun time, and it was kind of a turning point for many Americans between the old way of doing things and becoming more modern. So if you'll remember, we talked about our Industrial Revolution, and before 1900 and right in the early 20th century there, we were doing pretty good. You know, we had a lot of industries, we had some new inventions, and things were looking up. Well, we ended up getting involved in World War I, which we'll learn about later, and then afterwards, things kind of changed a little bit. So right before World War I, America owed money to some other countries because we're trying to kind of, get set up, and we were not fully able to make all the goods that we needed. And so we had to borrow some money, just like you might go to your parents and borrow some money and say you're going to pay them back, but this is on a much larger scale. So, for example, we owed, as of late 1914, we owed more than $3 billion. $3 billion. Now remember, this is in the early 1900s, so that's way more than $3 billion today would be, which is still a lot, right? Okay. Now after the war, so our war ends in 1918-ish, and the tables kind of turn. And instead of us owing a whole bunch of money, other countries owe us a bunch of money. So there's two words we need to talk about before we get into this part. The first word is prosperity. Basically, in a nutshell, prosperity would be making money. Debt would be owing money. Okay, so if you are prosperous, you are doing well. You're making money. You're making, or if you were like, let's say you were a farmer. If you were a prospering farmer, you might have a really good crop with a lot of product. Okay, so you can prosper in more ways than just money, but in the way we're going to talk about today, it's kind of about money. Debt is when you owe something to someone. Now, usually debt is in the form of money. Like I said, you can go to your parents and say, hey, I really want to buy this new Lego set, but I don't have enough money in my bank account. It's almost my birthday, and I know Grandma's going to send me $20. Okay? Maybe she sends you $20 every year for your birthday. Okay, so you say, can I borrow $20, and when Grandma sends me my check or my $20 bill, I'll pay you back. So you would owe a debt of $20 to your parents, should they say yes. So in this case, after World War I, a lot of European countries were in shambles. They're having a hard time. They're trying to put themselves back together, and they're really struggling. And so they come to America to, not literally come to America, but their government talks to our government, and they say, hey, can you help us out, and we will pay you back. Okay? So by 1919, foreign governments and individuals owed Americans almost $13 billion. So we went from owing other people $3 billion to other people owing us $13 billion. Let's see. Now, 1919, this is right before our 19th Amendment for our women suffragists was ratified. So this is kind of going on at the same time, okay? And I'm sorry. This is going on at the same time. So our Americans are kind of starting to let loose a little bit. They're like, oh, we're doing pretty good for ourselves. So we're going to read a little bit about what is happening. Between 1923 and 1929, average income for the United States rose 11%. So that means the average family was making 11% more money than they made before, which is a good thing. For millions of Americans, new prosperity brought new luxuries like indoor plumbing, electric lights, and affordable cars. So now they're making a little bit more money, but also things are becoming more common, and so they can afford more things. So instead of going outside in the dark to go to the outhouse, they can just get up and go to the bathroom in their own house. That's awesome. And instead of having to bring a candle or an oil lamp or light a lamp with actual fire, they have electric lights. 10 brownie points to the person who can tell me who invented the light bulb. Okay. However, so in the world, we've kind of got three classes of people. We've got upper class, which means they make a lot of money. They're very wealthy. We might call them rich. Middle class, which is your normal people. They have enough money to buy things they want and need, but they might not live in a mansion and vacation to the most fancy places every year, okay? And then we have our lower class, which is maybe they don't have as good of a job. Maybe they're not as educated and they have a harder time making money and providing for their family. And unfortunately, that's still the case today. There are families in America who do not have enough food to eat. So we all need to remember to be very thankful that even if we can't afford that new Lego set, we have food to eat on our tables. And there are families today in 2020 who can't say the same. Okay, but in the 20s, in our roaring 20s, the middle class they could now afford the new trinkets and gadgets that were available. So they could buy more conveniences. Of course, they had to work hard for their money, so they didn't just have all this extra money laying around like our wealthy upper class. But they could afford to buy some extras, some of the new inventions, the new gadgets, the new exciting things. But unfortunately, 42%, that's almost half, 42% struggled to make enough to support their families. So while our upper and middle class are enjoying life, we still have a large group in our population that is struggling to make substantial wages, which is basically just enough to get by. Part of that was because of the war. So we're thriving because of the war, but also some of our poverty or not having enough to get by. Some of our poverty also comes from the war, and a big part of that is the farmers. So during World War I, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, the government kind of contracted farmers, and they paid them a good amount to supply like wheat and corn and some other crops and supplies that they needed for the troops and for other people. But when that war ended, some of their contracts, sorry, someone is ringing my doorbell.